Hi guys, welcome back to ladensercrotchets. If you're new to the channel, my name is Liz. You're welcome. Kindly subscribe and join the family. In this tutorial, we're making this crop top using the granny stitch. If you enjoyed watching the previous tutorial where we did a granny stitch crop top, which is off shoulder, you're going to love this even more because it's quicker or it's faster to work. If you're going to enjoy the video and you feel like you want to gift me something in a special way, then you can click on the thanks button that is below the video and leave a gift of any size. I'll appreciate it a lot. This will go a long way in making sure that I'm able to acquire better tools so that I can create better content for you. Grab your materials and let's get into the tutorial. I'm working with a medium weight yarn as usual. This yarn is a Kenyan brand called Winter King. And then I'll be using my 4mm crochet hook. I'll need a dunny needle, a pair of scissors, and a measuring tape. We're going to work two separate panels, and this is the back panel of the top. And these are the measurements that you're going to need. So for the width, you're going to need your bust measurement divided by 2. Mine is 16, and when we are working this top, we stretch it out a little bit because we want it to fit perfectly onto our bust. So when I stretch it out, I'm getting to my 18. That's half of my bust measurement. The other measurement that you're going to need is the length from the armpits to the waist minus 2 inches. So the length that I want to work is 11, and therefore this from 9 to 11 I'll work a ribbon, and that's why I'm leaving an allowance of 2 inches. We're going to measure out 2 inches on this side and 2 inches on the other side in order to achieve this part. Then you're going to need your armhole length, and mine is, I worked an armhole of 8 inches. So when I measure from this point to the top, that's 6 inches, then plus the 2 inches that I left out on this part. You can work 8 inches if you're a size small to medium, but if you're a size large to extra large, then you're going to need to work up to 9 inches. And that means if this is your 2 inches right here, the extension on the upper part should be 7 inches. I'm actually thinking of extending this to get to 7 inches so that it gives me 9, because I don't want something that is too tight. So get your bust measurement and divide it by 2 so that we work the back panel, and once we're done with the back panel, we're going to work the front panel, which will be a bit different from this, although this part from the bottom to the armpits, they are worked the same. The only difference is in the top part of the top. Grab your yarn and the hook, and as usual, we begin with a slip knot. Then you're going to make a chain that will give you half of your bust when slightly stretched. I'm going to chain 47. The chain that you're going to make should be an odd number. So it can be 47, it can be 41, 45, 49, 52, and so on. So that's 2, I have my 47 chains, and we're going to measure this to see whether it will get us to 18. So without stretching, that gets me to 16. When I give this a bit of a stretch, it will get me to around 19, and I can work with that, because you also don't want something that is too tight such that you're forcing it through your body, or you're forcing it on your body. So make sure that you're stretching out your work just a little bit. To begin the first row, we hold the last chain and chain 2 more. That chain 2 will act as our first double crochet. Then we're going to yarn over, insert the hook into that chain that we're holding, yarn over, grab a loop so that you get 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the remaining 2 loops. That's a double crochet, and that makes 2 double crochets in the first chain. Yarn over, skip the next chain, the second chain, then work into the third, place 2 double crochets into the third chain, 1 and 2. Yarn over, skip the chain that follows, work into the next one, 2 double crochets, yarn over and skip the next chain, then work into the one that follows with 2 double crochets, and repeat this to the end of the row. I'm coming to the end of the row, and right now I have 2 chains remaining, and so I'll skip this one and work into the last one with 2 double crochets. And that's row 1. To begin row 2, we chain 2 and turn. The chain 2 is our first double crochet, then yarn over and work into the gap between the 2 double crochet clusters, this one right here. We skip over to that gap, place 2 double crochets there, then into the next gap, place 2 double crochets, and then we're going to place 2 double crochets into each of these gaps to the end. I'm in the last gap and I'm just placing 2 double crochets there, and to complete the row we place 1 double crochet on top of the chain 2 at the end, just 1 double crochet, then chain 2 to begin row 3 and turn your work. Now we begin in this gap right here, and we're just going to place 1 double crochet there. So that together with the chain 2 will make 2 double crochets. Then now we work in the gaps all the way to the end, 2 double crochets into each gap. I'm in the last gap and I'll place 1 double crochet into that gap. Then the second double crochet will be on top of the chain 2. And that's the end of row 3. We chain 2 and turn to begin row 4. And we're going to work row 4 the same as we worked row 2. So yarn over and work into the next gap with 2 double crochets. Then repeat by working 2 double crochets into each of the gaps. At the end, in the last gap, we're going to have 2 double crochets. Then we're going to have our last double crochet on top of the chain 2. So just repeat row 4 the same way you worked row 2. So just work row 4 the same way you worked row 2. So at the end, in the last gap, I have my 2 double crochets. Then the last stitch is on top of the chain 2, 1 double crochet, chain 2, and turn to begin row 4. Actually row 5. We are beginning row 5, and for row 5 we repeat row 3. So into this gap we place just 1 double crochet. Then into the next gap we place 2 double crochets. Into the gap that follows, 2 double crochets. Then 2 double crochets into all the gaps. As we come to the end of row 5, we're going to have 1 double crochet into the last gap, then 1 double crochet on top of the chain 2. And we're going to keep repeating row 2 and row 3 till we get a total of 20 rows. That is, in my case, I'll work till I have 20 rows, because that is the length that I want from my waist to the armpits, considering that we should have an allowance of 2 inches. That will be our ribbon. So in total, my length from the waist to the armpits is 11 minus 2, that's 9. And I'll work 20 rows in order to get to my 9 inches. I'll go ahead and work the 20 rows, then I'll be back once I'm done. Then I'll show you what to do next. I'm done with the 20 rows, and this gets me to a length of, let's see, a length of 9 inches, like I mentioned, and I'll do an extension to get to 11 with the ribbon. So now, after the 20 rows, I'll just chain 1 and cut off the yarn at that point. Then pull through and fasten, and then turn to the other side. Then we're going to measure out 2 inches onto this side that we've just cut off the yarn. Measure 2 inches like that, and the 2 inches get me to the 4th gap. That is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to insert my hook into the 4th gap, or I'm going to do a slip knot and then start in the 4th gap. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Insert the hook there. This is standard for all the sizes, so whichever size you're working, you're just going to count 4 gaps from that point. Then reattach the yarn and chain 2. Go back into that same gap and do a double crochet, so that you get a total of 2 double crochets, because the chain 2 is our first double crochet. Then we're going to yarn over, skip into the next gap. We are not skipping, we're just working into the next gap, 2 double crochets into that gap. Move over to the next gap and work 2 double crochets. Work 2 double crochets next. And continue until you have, so now we have 1, 2, 3 gaps not worked. So we're going to work until we have 3 gaps remaining, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to work up to this 4th gap right here. Just 2 double crochets into each of the gaps. So this is the last gap that I'm going to work, 2 double crochets, and now this is what we have. We can call that row 1 of the top part of the top, chain 2 and turn to begin row 2, which is my row 22 in total. Then after chaining 2 and turning, we're going to work 2 double crochets into this gap, that very first gap, then 2 double crochets next in the next gap, and 2 double crochets into all the gaps to the end of the row. This is my row 22 or row 2 of the extension part. At the end, we have 2 double crochets into the last gap. Then the last stitch is going to be a double crochet on top of the chain 2. Now chain 2 and turn to begin the next row, and we begin in the gap right here. We're going to place 1 double crochet. Then the next gap we'll get 2 double crochets. So from this point, we're just going to repeat the same way we've been working. Just repeat row 2 and row 3, alternate them. So I'm going to alternate my 2 rows till I get a total of 14 rows. And then I'll be back to show you what to do next. That is the 14 rows I'm counting from this point. So in total, I'll have 34 rows. This is after the 14 rows, and at the end I'm just going to place a double crochet and then chain 1 and cut off the yarn. At that point we are done with the back panel. So cut off the yarn, pull through and fasten. And this is what we have for the back panel. And we are ready to start the next panel, which is the front panel. Now for the front panel, we're just going to work the same way until we get to a row after the extension. I've already done that, so let me show you. We're going to work the front panel the same way. So I've already done that, and for the top part, you're just going to extend for 4 rows. Then after the 4 rows, we're going to work out something different from the back panel. So go on, work your front panel up to the 4th row. Then in the 5th or the 25th, you're going to chain 2 and turn. Begin in the first gap where you place just 1 double crochet. Then place 2 double crochets into the next gap, 1 and 2. Then 2 double crochets into the next. Those are 3. Then you're going to have into the 4th gap and into the 5th, like that. Then from here we're going to chain 2 and turn to begin row 6. We begin in this gap, place 2 double crochets, 2 double crochets into the next gap, into the next one, then next, and finally 1 double crochet on top of the chain 2. So from here we need a total of 10 rows to get us to the 14 rows extension, and that means from this point we need 10 from here up. So these are 2. I'm going to work 8 more to get to the 10 rows, or to get to a total of 34 rows from the bottom, a total of 14 rows from this point, a total of 10 rows from here. So let me work my rows, and then I'll get back once I'm done. At this point, I'm done with the 10 rows extension, and I'm just going to chain one and cut off the yarn at that point. Pull through and fasten. So that is what we're going to have on one side of the front panel. Now we're just going to turn our work to the other side, and we want to reconnect the yarn on the 5th gap from the other side. So I'll start with a slip knot, then count 5 gaps from this end. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Put your hook into the 5th, do a slip stitch there to reconnect the yarn, chain 2, work a double crochet into the same gap, 2 double crochets into the next gap, 2 into the one that follows, 2 into the next. In the last gap, we're just going to have 1 double crochet, then 1 double crochet on top of the chain 2. That's our row 5 from this point, or row 25 in total. Chain 2, turn, and now we're going to work the extension on this side, same as we've done on the other side. So just keep repeating the rows till you get a total of 10 rows from here. So we begin in the first gap with 2 double crochets, 2 double crochets next in the next gap, 2 double crochets in the gap that follows, 2 double crochets in that last gap, then 1 double crochet into the chain 2 at the beginning, chain 2, turn, keep working. I'll meet you once I'm done. This is after the extension on the other side of the front panel, and at this point we are done, but we're not going to cut off the yarn at this point. We're going to use it to reconnect the front panel with the back panel. So we're just going to grab the back panel. Now the front part, or the front panel, is facing, this is the wrong side and this is the right side. So I'll get the back panel and I'll place it with the wrong side up, like this. Then I'm going to connect those 2 upper parts. From here, I'm going to chain 1 and turn. So I want to connect the shoulder part of the front panel with the shoulder part of the back panel, and I need to count the number of stitches. So at this point I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 stitches. So I'll count 11 stitches from this other side. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So this is where I'm going to start connecting the 2. I've already chained 1. So let me just pull a loop like that. After chaining 1, put your hook into this first stitch and onto the 11th stitch on the other side. Then yarn over, grab a loop, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops to complete a single crochet. So we're connecting with single crochets. Then we're going to go into the next stitch on this side and the next stitch on the other side, connect with a single crochet, the 3rd stitch and the 3rd stitch on the other side, single crochet and single crochet to the end. The last stitch is on the chain 2, and then the double crochet on the other side, single crochet there, then chain 1 and cut off the yarn. That shoulder part is connected, so we're just going to do the same thing on the other side. So go to the other side. We're going to begin from this end. I should have left a longer tail here, but so we're just going to reconnect the yarn. So grab your yarn, put your hook through the first stitch on this side and through to the stitch on the other side, which was the chain 2 stitch. Then you're just going to grab a loop of the yarn and pull through for a slip stitch, sorry. Then chain 1. I'm going to work over the ends, these ones. After chaining 1, I'll go into the next stitch and the next stitch on the other side and do a single crochet. The third stitch and the third stitch on the other side, do a single crochet, then continue till you connect it to this end. Then once you get to the last stitch, you're just going to chain 1 at that point and cut off the yarn. So chain 1, cut off the yarn. Then I'm going to weave in the ends on both sides. Because these ones are already weaved in, I'll just cut them off. Using the darning needle, just put that end through and weave it in. Then cut off whatever remains. Do the same thing on the other side. So now the shoulder part of the top is joined. This is what we have, and this is the right side. Next, we're going to connect the sides, either from the bottom to the armpits at this point, or from the armpits to the bottom. You can join from whatever side you wish to. Now to do that, I'll begin at the bottom. Identify the very first stitch at the very last stitch at that end and on the other end. Then grab your yarn and pull through for a slip stitch. Then at that point you're going to chain 1, and we're going to work over these 2 ends that we have here. Now we're going to be working in the rows. So there's this very first row right here, and the very first row on the other side, put your hook through and do a single crochet, then go back into the same and do another single crochet. So you're working 2 single crochets into every row. Then you move on to the next row and the next row on the other side, place 2 single crochets there, 1 and 2, get to the third row and the third row on the other side, place 2 single crochets, then into the fourth row and the fourth row on the other side, place your 2 single crochets there, 1 and 2, then onto the next row. Make sure you're aligning your rows, then just keep going, working 2 single crochets into every row till you get to this point right here. So I'm in the last row and I'm just going to place the 2 double crochets. Now the first double crochet will be in the row, then the last one will be on the stitch, the very last stitch on top and the other stitch on the other side. Then complete the single crochet, chain 1 and cut off the yarn at that point, pull through, fasten, then weave in that end, weave in the ends, these 2 ends, and then you're going to go to the other side, reconnect your yarn the same way we've done, and work the single crochets to the top. I'll do that, then I'll be back once I've connected this side and weaved in all the ends. I'm done joining both sides of the top, and we're just going to turn this to the right side. So now we are almost done. You can actually wear the top like this if you don't want to do the ribbon, but the ribbon makes it prettier. So we're going to do a ribbon on the waist part, a ribbon on the shoulder part, or on the sleeves, and a ribbon on the neckline. This is the ribbon on one armhole, and I'm going to show you how to work the ribbon on this other side. So you need to grab your hook and the yarn. Then you're going to get the middle parts of the armpit, that is the part where we joined the sides of the top, right here. And put your hook through that stitch that is next to the middle part. Grab the yarn and pull it through. Then chain 1, go back into that stitch with a single crochet, work a single crochet into the next stitch, into the next, work a single crochet next. So we are working a single crochet into every stitch. That gets us to the corner. When you get to the corner, you're going to place a single crochet into that corner, and then we're going to turn to the rows. In the rows, we're going to place 2 single crochets into every row. So 1, 2, into that row. Into the next row, we're going to place 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. Into the row that follows, 1 and 2. Then place 2 single crochets into all the rows. We are working around the armhole just to create the stitches. So that means I'll continue working the single crochets through the rows till I get to this corner. Once I get to the corner, I'll work 1 single crochet into each of these stitches till I get to the last stitch before the stitch I started with, and then I'll connect there, then start working the ribbon. So I'll just continue working 2 single crochets into every row, but then when I get to the stitches, I'll change and start working just 1 single crochet into every stitch. I'm at the top part, so I've just worked on this row on this side, then I'll work the row on the other side with 2 single crochets, then continue to the other side of the armhole. So I'm at the corner where the stitches begin, and I'm going to work over this end, then I'll work on this corner stitch, then work onto the next stitch and work into all the stitches to the end, 1 single crochet into every stitch. So right here in the last stitch, and to complete that row we're going to slip stitch onto the first single crochet that we did right here. Put your hook through and do a slip stitch. So that row of single crochets is done. Next we're going to start working the ribbon, and we start by chaining 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Then block off the 5th chain and chain 1 more to make 6. Chain 1 more, then put your hook into that chain that you're holding, yarn over and pull through, then pull through the loop that is on the hook to complete a slip stitch. That is 1. Work a 2nd slip stitch into the next chain, a 3rd slip stitch, then a 4th one and a 5th one into the last stitch. Now that will get you to the rows, to the stitches. So this is the first stitch where we've chained. We're going to skip over to the next stitch, this one right here, and do a slip stitch, then do a slip stitch into the next stitch. So we're doing 2 of them, 1 into the first stitch, 1 into the second stitch. Now when we are working back, we're going to begin from this stitch. So this will be, let me show you, this will be our first stitch of the second row, and we will be working in the back loop. So once you do the second slip stitch, you're going to turn, put your work like this. Now go into this stitch in the back loop, that very first stitch or the 5th stitch that we've done, and do a slip stitch there. That is 1. Go into the next stitch in the back loop, do a slip stitch, that's 2. Do a slip stitch into the 3rd back loop, then into the 4th in the back loop, and that gets us to the last stitch. In the last stitch, this is the back loop right here, but we're not just going to work only the back loop, we'll work the 2 loops, these 2 loops. At the end on this side, we're going to be working both loops. So work both loops to complete row 2, chain 1 and turn to begin row 3. For row 3, we start in the back loop of the first stitch, this right here, that's the back loop. So do a slip stitch. Notice that my slip stitches are not too tight, because if you make them too tight, it gets so hard to work the next row. So make sure that your slip stitches are not too tight. Go into the next stitch in the back loop and do a slip stitch, that's 2. Then we have a 3rd one, have a 4th slip stitch into the 4th stitch, then into the last stitch we're going to place the 5th slip stitch, this one right here, that's our 5th. Then we get to the row, to the stitches. So we worked this stitch previously, we're going to go into the next stitch, this one, and do a slip stitch, and then do a 2nd slip stitch, then turn your work to begin row 4. We begin row 4 in the back loop of the first stitch, this one right here. So do a slip stitch there, do a slip stitch into the 2nd stitch, into the 3rd in the back loop, onto the fourth. And now as we come to the end, we're going to work the both loops. So into these 2 loops, do your last slip stitch there, chain 1 and turn to begin row 5. We begin row 5 in the back loop of the first stitch, this one. So slip stitch, do a slip stitch next, that's the second, then do the third, the fourth, and the fifth. So now we get to the stitches on the main part, into the stitch that follows, this one right here. We do a slip stitch, then another slip stitch next, and turn. Then continue working the slip stitch into every stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth one onto the both loops. So now this is row 6, chain 1, and turn to begin row 7. And we're just going to repeat these rows. We are alternating between row 2 and row 3 till you go all the way around the armhole. And I'll meet you back here to show you how to connect that part of the ribbon. So right here I have 1 stitch remaining, so I'll just slip stitch into it, chain 1, then I'll cut off the yarn and leave a long tail, then pull through, and I'm going to use this to attach these two ends together like this. So I'll just grab my yarn needle, put the strap through, then I'll work the back loop on the side that I've ended with. So this back loop, let me show you the back loop on one side, then on this side I'll work both loops. I'm in the last stitch, and in the last stitch I'll work both loops on both sides. Then I'll just bring this end back to this part so that I can weave it in. Then I'll just cut off the end that remains. And we're done with the second armhole. Now, the next part that you're going to work is the neckline. And we're going to work the neckline the same way we've worked the armholes, with 5 stitches, 5 slip stitches. We're going to reconnect the yarn on this corner where we join the shoulders right here. we'll reconnect the yarn. Then the first row is going to be a row of single crochets all the way around, and then we're going to ensure that in the so I've reconnected the yarn by slip stitching. I'm going to ensure that in the first stitch I place a single crochet, and into one single crochet into all the stitches. Then when we get to the rows, we are going to place two single crochets in each of the rows. So we're basically working the same way we worked the armhole. So a row of single crochet all the way around to this end, then slip stitch to connect the row, and then after that we're going to work the ribbon with 5 stitches, just like we've done with the armhole. Now I'll do that off camera because you already know how to work that, so I'll show you how to work the bottom part. For the bottom part, you're going to connect the yarn at this corner, and because we already have the stitches for the bottom part, we're not going to do a row of single crochets. We're just going to go straight to the ribbon, and I'll start with a slip knot. Start with a slip knot, then connect the yarn at the corner and do a slip stitch there. Sorry. Do the slip stitch. Now for the bottom part, we're going to chain 10. Then after the 10 chains, you're going to hold the last stitch and chain one more, then go into that stitch with a slip stitch, then work one slip stitch into each of the back loops for a total of 10 slip stitches. That's my 10 slip stitches. Then I'll skip to the next stitch, the one on the other side of the hem, this stitch right here. Do a slip stitch there, then do a slip stitch into the next stitch, then turn. To begin row 2, we work row 2 in the back loop, and we basically work in the same way we worked the armholes. The only difference is that we are working 10 instead of 5 stitches. So begin in the first stitch in the back loop and work all the back loops for a total of 10 rows, and keep repeating. If you feel that 10 is a lot of stitches at the bottom, you can do 6 or 8, whatever works for you. So I'll go on work the ribbon at the bottom and the ribbon on the neckline, and I'll be back. Once you're done with the ribbon at the bottom, as you can see, this is what you're going to have. I was working with 10 slip stitches, but I reduced it to 6 because I felt like my top was going to be too long, and therefore having 6 stitches, that would be okay. And then I also did the ribbon on the neckline, like I mentioned. As you can see, with the ribbons, the top is prettier. However, you can work your top without the ribbons and it will be totally okay. So thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the tutorial. If you've enjoyed the tutorial, kindly leave a like, a comment, share with your friends so that they can watch and recreate if they love crochet. And if you would like to leave a special thanks, kindly click on the thanks button below the video, and you can leave a gift of any size. It doesn't matter. I'll totally appreciate it. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and see you in the next tutorial.